Hello, everyone. Hello, Javi. It's good to see you this morning.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's Sunday. It's the best time of med school is when it's the weekend because you get to study all day. So it's exciting,
Yes, of
right?
course. Well, if you don't mind, if you could introduce yourself and kind of tell everyone about yourself, what your name is, what medical school you go to, and then I guess as an initial question, kind of why you decided to apply to medical school.
Yeah. So I'm Javi, or first name is Osman, but I like to go by Javi, and I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. Now I go to medical school. I'm a second year here in Lubbock, Texas, in Texas Tech School of Medicine. Um, it's just been a fun time. I went to undergrad at the school in Dallas. I wanted to swim for college, so I was a swimmer. But then I got sick and things happened, so I had to kind of go back home. And going back home to El Paso to UTEP, it was just really nice. I started coaching a swim team. I started teaching chemistry. I started really getting more involved on campus, and that just really made me a lot happier. And kind of took me a little while longer to graduate from college. After that, I was like, when is the right time to take my MCAT? I figured it'd be better after I graduated. So while I worked as a scribe and as a coach, I studied for my MCAT, and then I was really happy with my score. My score came out the day that Lady Gaga tickets came on sale, and I was so happy because I got a really good score. So I was felt comfortable dropping $800 on these tickets, and so it
Oh,
was.
nice.
And then I was really excited to apply to medical school, and then kind of going through the process. Didn't get in, which happens. And so applied to a master's program here in Lubbock. Did the master's program, kind of beefed up whatever I could on my application, applied, and I got accepted early acceptance to my top school. So I was super jazzed about that. And ever since then, it's just working out, kind of having a good time with friends, and hanging out with my dog and just studying, living the dream. Sometimes the dream can feel like a nightmare, but I'm kidding. It's actually really, really fun. It's a fun time, and it's just really awesome to be in this position. But to answer the question of what made me want to go into medical school,
Yeah.
obviously, like all of us as kids, like we like science. So there's always that. Always have that initial interest, right?
Mhm.
um Going to starting undergrad, it's like, oh, you just think like, oh, well, this is just what I need to do now. But it really took for me, going through some of my mental health issues that I have gone through in the past, and getting hospitalized, that whole process up until that point was a lot of people helping me. And when I was a psychiatric patient, it was like, oh, well, you really see how vulnerable you are. And it's also seeing like how poorly people treat psychiatric patients, or how poorly people look down upon them. I was a very educated person, but other people there are going through these other issues. And it was so annoying to see like the security guards or the nurses kind of like talking bad about them. And that really upset me. And I was like, well, so kind of thinking about like, I want to be in a position where I can kind of change that mentality in medicine, where patients aren't looked at as kind of just, things. I
Yeah.
want to be that physician leader to set the tone. So when I finally got better, I was like, okay, round two, a lot of people had helped me, and now I want to be the person that can help others. So through just my experiences of coaching and teaching, I also saw I can make a difference in people's lives. It made me a lot happier. It made me work through a lot of my own personal issues. And
Mhm.
it just, and I always saw that coalesce well into medicine, the science and the teaching and the mentorship. When I became a scribe, just seeing how these physicians that I worked with were just so compassionate, especially in the ER, in such a transient setting, right? Even
Mhm.
in such a limited amount of time, they're able to relieve these patients and the families of their worries. And I just thought that was so impactful. But it was actually a nurse practitioner that really made such an impact on me, because I was working with her overnight, and she had this psychiatric patient, and the guy was like, I'm so sorry, like he was apologizing, and she was like, why are you apologizing? You're just here for a cough, right? You're here because you're sick. Whether it's you're because you're sad, depressed, or here for a cough, you're just here for help, and you're just as good as everyone else. And for me, I was like, that's the type of physician that I want to be. Whether or not she was a nurse, what type of provider she was is relevant. When I saw that, I was like, that's what I want to do. And so that really spurred me to like continue this path. And even after getting rejected, it was like, no, I know this is what I want to do. When I started graduate school, I started working at this free clinic that Texas Tech has. And being the only person who speaks Spanish, basically at this campus, one of the few who speak Spanish,
Mhm.
it was like, you fill this role. and it's like, you're the only person in that whole building that can speak to these people. And it's like, dang, that really, and I'm like, I have to be in this. Like, this is exactly where I belong. And so when I finally got in, I was like, oh, yes, finally, it finally worked out. And so really just the experiences of, being someone who was vulnerable and then being in a position where you're kind of responsible for other people really just motivated me to bring that into medicine. Because in medicine, you're taking care of people at their sick, at their most sick, at their most vulnerable. At the same time, as a physician, I want to be a mentor to people who might be in my similar situations where, having a bad GPA or dealing with mental health issues. It's teaching them that the journey is still possible. Might be a little longer, but it's still
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. Dude, oh man, that's so awesome. I think, oh, your story's so powerful. Like I know we talked before, through FaceTime, but hearing it kind of in its totality just now, like I think it's actually amazing. I think you definitely have a really strong will, because like I don't know if I apply the first round and then didn't get in, I feel like I would be so emotionally distraught that I'd be like, okay, I can't apply again. But like the fact that, you worked really hard, you didn't get in your first time, and then you still continued working in scribing and your master's program and stuff, and still felt like it was your calling. Like that's definitely the type of drive you need, I think, to go into this profession.
No, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong. All of my friends, because so in Texas, the way it works is there's a match day for medical schools. So
Okay.
there's a set day where everyone gets in, and all
Mm.
my friends got in except me. And
Uh,
yeah, I was so hurt. I went home, to my, home, and I literally cried to my mom for like an hour and a half.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what's the point of me doing all this stuff that I do? What's the point of everything? I'm never going to be a doctor. But
Hmm.
then here's a funny thing. I'm a big fan of Lady Gaga,
Hmm.
and it's silly, but hearing her interviews and stuff like that, her mom told her when she would get it rejected to all these from all these record labels, you get one day to cry, you get one day, and then the next day you get back to work. And so at that time, I was like, today's my day to cry, and tomorrow we get back to work.
Yeah.
And that's my motivator. It's a silly thing, but that's even in medical school, like my first medical school exam. Well, I didn't fail it, but I barely passed it.
Hmm.
And I was very depressed because I was like, am I even good enough? And it was the same idea. Give yourself one day to throw the biggest pity party in the world. But then the next day you get back to work. And then the following exam, I was in a high 90. And I was like, okay, it's just a matter of accepting what you can't change, right? But figuring out how can you move forward with it. And that's really kind of what in my opinion, is when it comes to this application process. Whether you have a deficit in your resume or you don't get in, it's accept that what happened, but figure out how can you move forward with it.
Yeah. Oh man, I like that message a lot. I definitely, I try and apply that mentality a lot in my own life. I didn't know that Lady Gaga said those specific words, but now I respect her a lot even more. That's awesome. So, I wanted to also just ask you a couple more questions, like about your past. So, um, you had sort of that moment where you saw some things in like the medical community that uh, you didn't like, particularly like you mentioned with the prison guard and some of the nurses, like from your own experience as a hospital patient. Before any of that, like maybe even in high school and middle school, did you always know or have an inclination to become a physician, or was it sort of later during university where you really decided to become a physician? Or was it something like you were born with, like, oh man, I was born to be a doctor?
No, I definitely, it was not something where it's like, as a child, I always enjoyed science.
Mhm.
My best classes were always science and English. I also enjoy reading and writing. And when I was a kid, it's like I was in all like the whatever programs that my elementary school had. I was in all of those advanced ones for science. But I remember telling my fourth grade teacher, my dream job is to write the speeches for the president. Because
Nice.
I always enjoyed writing. And then kind
Our
of
old president could have used probably some of your speeches.
I know, I sometimes, yeah. I was like, I mean, I feel like I could have been useful in a few recent administrations, but, and then in high school, it's like I excelled in science and English continued, and it was more like, everyone tells you to be a doctor. So I was like, yeah, I'll be a doctor. Why not?
Mhm.
But it's like as a high school kid, like you don't know what you're doing. You're just saying things and things always change. So that's why when I got into undergrad, it was like, oh, I guess I'm gonna be a pre-med now. But for me, it's just interesting looking back. Like that phrase to me has no meaning because I didn't know what that meant. It was like, oh, you just take these classes and that's it. I come up from a very like immigrant family where like no one went to school and so I kind of had to figure out this whole thing by myself. And it's just really difficult when like you think you want to do something, but then other things get in the way.
Yeah.
And, but because you don't know what else to do, what other options exist, you're still kind of aimlessly following this track that at the time was kind of a waste of time because my grades weren't good. My grades weren't good. I was not doing the right thing. It's like you looked at me at then, it's like, oh, you're not going to get to medical school, kid. And you'd be right. But in my head, I'm like, well, I don't know what else I would do. But it was really more like kind of going through the stuff that I went through, um, for two reasons. One, mental illness, regardless if you're a psychiatrist or whatever, you're gonna deal with that as a physician.
Mhm.
When someone gets diagnosed with diabetes for the first time, there's a emotional component to that. Someone gets diagnosed with cancer, there's an emotional component to that. There's
Oh
things
yeah.
that will happen after the fact. But at the same time, people look at medical students, right, as these perfect beings, like, oh, they had all their whole stuff together. And I was like, I didn't. My life was a mess. My life
Yeah.
was hard, and not hard, but like I was going through things. And people don't, I'm just right now just thinking about all the stories that I could say is like, it was just very difficult to kind of
Mhm.
going back to this direct question that you asked is it was really just more of a gradual experience of this is what I can do as a physician. These are the people like myself that I can help. And at the same time, with my story, it's also I want to show people that there are other types of physicians out there, other types of people who become physicians, and not just this cookie cutter type of person.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Y-
just been, and this is like, I remember interviewing here at Tech, and I had 3 interviews, and on the last one, I did cry a little bit because she asked me, "So what's your dream?" And I was like, and I haven't thought about this dream in a long time. And I was like, I have this one dream. When I'm a doctor, hopefully a badass. No, when I'm a doctor, I want to go back to my undergrad at UTEP. I want to go to the pre-med club, and I want to tell them, raise your hand if you have above a 3.8 GPA. And what's going to happen? You're going to see all these eager pre-meds just shoot their hands up, right? They're going to be so excited, like, yeah, I'm doing it. And then I'm going to say, all right, well, put your hand down. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people who have a 3.3, a 3.1 like me, because those are the ones who need this help, who need this motivation. And I want to show y'all that it's doable. Again, like I said, it might take a little longer, but it's definitely doable. Yeah, and that's what I want to be. I
Mhm.
want to be a mentor, not for everyone, right? But the people who are the 4.0s, they'll have an easier time. Like that's just objectively true.
Yeah.
People who have the 3.1s, 3.2s, those are the ones who need a little more spice in it. And that's just like that's really the day I can do that, it's like I know I would have done my job as a person and as a physician.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so awesome. I like that so much. I think especially if you really do want to become a physician, I think it is possible. I've never mentored pre-meds. Like I've gotten questions and DMs and stuff, but I've never truly like mentored someone like a pre-med for a long duration of time. So I think that is really powerful, especially for people who really want to go into medical school, but maybe don't have the best stats, but they know that they're going to work hard and they have the drive to do so. Like those are definitely people I think who should be in healthcare and who should be admitted. Cause like, I mean, we both know at this point, like it doesn't matter what your GPA and stuff is. Like you need to be able to survive medical school and like have the drive all 4 years to do so.
Oh no, exactly. And like, people think about like, a bad GPA, you can turn that into such a strength
Yeah.
because that shows when you go to medical school, you know how to fail. And a lot of people have that reality check. Like you're not going to be early 99s in medical school. So how are you going to
Dude,
recover from
yes. Dude, I
that?
had that reality check. My third unit was anatomy, or my third block of an anatomy was our first unit, and my third block was GI. And
Uh-huh.
GI anatomy is nuts. Like on the cadaver, like, what am I looking at? Like, at least with the heart, sometimes they take it out and you can clearly see, like, okay, I'm looking at the right vena cava or something,
Oh yeah.
or like the left atrium. Like, I can clearly identify it. But GI anatomy, it's such a mess. And I actually scored half a point below on my exam. So I got a 69.5, and you need a 70 to pass. So that was a fail.
Uh-huh.
But I spent like a whole day like scrambling for a half point, which I eventually got. But like, that I wasn't supposed to pass. My teacher, I think, just kind of bumped up my grade because they saw like I was so stressed. But
Yeah.
that, like, um I'm not trying to sound condescending or anything, but that was essentially the first time in my entire academic career that I did fail.
Mhm.
And that was my reality check, like, because like university, high school, middle school, I also always loved science and stuff.
Yeah.
I felt like it was easy for me, I could excel. But then that right there was my reality check. And like, I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened. Like, I don't know what to do now. um I don't think my response was too good. So for my next unit for neuro, I basically studied 12 hours a day. I was so scared of failing. Like, that was not a right mindset to have. That was the best test I ever did it on in medical school, that neuro exam.
Uh-huh.
But that was my response to like shut myself in for the next block and like have no life, because I was worried that the next exam was going to be a repeat.
Oh no,
Um,
dude, I totally get that because I was the same after that first test I said. For the next unit, I would just wake up. So for us, it's an anatomy block, so all anatomy. I
okay,
would
yeah,
wake up, I'd be in the lab by 6:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't leave school until like 7 or 8 p.m.
yeah.
Just I was like, I can't let this happen again. And I did super, super well. But then you look back and you're like, is it worth it? Is it
No,
worth
it's not worth.
not worth it. It's definitely not worth it. And it's just that's why when people kind of, because I'm very open about making fun of like myself about like, C's get degrees and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
people are like, oh, I don't want a doctor to get to C. It's like, you don't understand completely how hard it is sometimes to get a C in medical school. Like it's not like undergrad where you get a C because you just barely do anything.
Yeah,
Sometimes you put in all this work and you might come up short, but that's just because the material is not only difficult, it's just so voluminous.
yeah, for sure.
Um, but again, that's why this advent of pass fail curriculums and step being pass fail, at least for someone like me, it's such a blessing because then I can have a life. Um, but yeah, I definitely feel that, man.
Yeah. I did kind of want to ask that actually. Since you brought it up, it was one of the questions I had in the back of my mind. But so for me, my whole first 2 years was centered around step one, and I took it scored. I
Mhm.
took it last year, and that is a stress that begins on day one for us. But I guess I forgot when they made the decision to go pass fail. But have you known the whole time that it was pass fail, or were you
Yeah.
still thinking you're studying for a scored test?
So my class matriculated in 2020, right? Yeah, 2020.
Yeah.
And so in March of 2020 is when that decision was made. So all of us went in knowing that SEP was going to be pass fail.
Okay, so the whole time you knew. So
Yeah.
how did that I guess if you can just talk about how that influenced your studying and just your mental health, and also like how you approach classwork, because now that it's pass fail, like for us, lectures, all of that, it didn't matter at all. Like the only thing day one until 1.5 years later when we take our step one exam was all step one focus. Like I
Mhm.
basically skipped all lectures. I would only do UWorld questions and Anki, because it just, from a numbers game, it didn't matter. Like I would pass my in-house exams and then go straight to step one studying like a year, like 12 months before my exam, because I knew it was scored. So I wonder how you're like approaching your medical education, knowing that it's pass fail. Like, for example, do you go to lectures? Like, do you engage with your professors? Because for us, it felt like we didn't have the time to do that, because our main goal was to only prepare for the exam, which kind of sucked to some extent, but it is what it is.
So definitely, so one, I was in a very unique position when I first started because my master's program, the first year you take your first year medical school classes, and the second year you teach them as a TA. And
Mhm.
so coming to this exact same medical school, I have already taken these classes. So for me, I was already very familiar with the material. So with SEP being pass fail and with our curriculum being pass fail, I didn't care because I was like, oh, I know what I need to study to get a decent grade. And for me, because I knew SEP was pass fail, I was like, I need to focus on research. And so I got involved into research right away when I officially started medical school. But then fast forward now to second year where I have not taken these classes at all. Um, it's still kind of a similar idea. I was like, okay, what is high yield? What is covered in boards? Or so if those of you don't know, Boards and Beyond is just like a third-party resource. What's covered in a third-party resource? What's covered in this book we call First Aid? Um, that's what I cared about to know. All these lecture details, I was like, oh, it's not in First Aid, it doesn't exist. And so the way I would do is like the week of an exam, that's when I either binge watch lectures just to get any little random detail that I might miss, or I would look at the PowerPoint slides. But as the semester progressed, I realized this isn't worth it. It's like stressing myself over lecture is not worth it anymore. And so I just really stopped caring about lecture. And it's just like, I just need to know what's important, what's going to be important for STEP, and also enough that I don't fail.
Yeah.
And even doing UWorld questions right now, I am happy with how I'm doing most of the time. Sometimes not all the time, but it's like, it's really nice to not have this burden of the score, of the number, concerning STEP, because in my opinion, I think the system rewards more people who are more entrepreneurial, who are more go-getters, who are thinking outside the box and not just thinking about the science, but also thinking about the community, thinking about the people they're going to help. And that's what I like about this new system that we're in. Obviously, pros and cons for several people, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It obviously benefits a certain type of person more than another. But that's just a reality. But at the same time, is medicine is also changing more to that aspect, where it's not about the physicians who are savants, the physicians who just care about the science. It's about the physicians who can relate to people, the physicians who can care, get involved in their community. That's where the medicine is leading. And that's why I like the idea of STEP being passed fail.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
No, that did answer my question.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it definitely answered my question. It was like, for us, there was always that looming pressure of STEP because it was scored, like that constant pressure. And it was like, that was kind of the only thing that made the preclinical years difficult. Like otherwise, like if step one didn't exist, like preclinical was awesome. Like, especially for people who are used to studying, like we've studied our whole lives. That wasn't too challenging. It was just the fact that there's this enormous score like looming in the background of everything.
God,
And you're always thinking like, my lectures doesn't matter. Like I just need to be constantly scoring well in UWorld, like in preparation for this exam.
yeah.
But it seems like some of that pressure is definitely taken off for you guys, like from what I'm hearing.
Well, I just can't imagine like, like to pass step, you need a 196. I
Yeah.
can't imagine like the idea of like, I need a 240, it's
Yeah.
like,
That was definitely my minimum too. Like 230, 240. Like that's a different mentality to have.
it's just insane, and it's like,
Yeah.
it sucks for people who should be in these more competitive specialties, right? But if you fall short from a number, it's like, oh, well, too bad. And that's so unfortunate, and that's why I like the idea of it, is it gives people more opportunities to pursue whatever their dream might be.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about that score though is like derm, for example, it's really hard to get into, but I'm pretty sure that it's like 5% of step one is derm. Like I only saw like 4 skin pictures on my whole step one exam. I swear to God. One was like a lupus manifestation or something. I'm like, okay, so like this 10% or 5% of a specialty, which you could have actually scored high on, but you don't know your actual score breakdown. You just get the number.
Yeah.
Is going to dictate whether or not you get into a specific specialty. That's like wild.
It's
Because it's
so
such a comprehensive exam too. Like if you're trying to apply for a derm residency with like a 210, which is up on the lower end for a derm residency, but you're an exceptional like derm clinician, like during your 3rd year and 4th year, and you did well in your AIs, like that 210 could be the deciding factor. Like even though objectively you might have been an amazing dermatologist, but
yeah.
It's things like that. And then I guess a follow-up question, but do you think so I haven't taken step 2 yet, but I do kind of know what it's about since I've done like 3 shelf exams as of now.
Mhm.
But I'm just worried that well, I'm in an interesting situation because my both of my scores will be scored, but I'm in the pass fail cohort now.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what that's going to look like. But do you think that that now just all the pressure is just moved to step 2? Like what is your class's sentiment on step 2 now, since that is still scored?
Yeah. So we all are agreement that step two is going to be, the new one.
Mhm,
And I'm in this curriculum policy committee, and we have all these discussions with the faculty. And, I'm like, I give my opinion. I'm like, I would rather be held accountable for the material I learned in my clinical years more than the material I learned in my preclinical years.
mhm.
And some of the PhDs kind of like made a face, and I was like, I know. But I was like, in my opinion, knowing all these little enzymes is not going to be the make or break one day as a physician. And that's what step one really focuses on, is kind of the more basic sciences. Obviously, I'm speaking kind of ignorantly because I haven't gone through everything, right? But when it comes to step two, my understanding is it's what you learn during your third and fourth years, right?
Yeah.
Your third year. And it's like, I definitely would much rather be told I need to learn that stuff a lot better. And I think that score would be more reflective of my competency as a physician, than my step one score. Um, because that's the cool stuff also. It's like, that's the stuff where it's like, how do you know how to think as a clinician? Do you know how to combine, integrate different topics? Do you know how to also take the patient into account, as opposed to, doing UWorld questions like, do you know if this issue is due to a post-translational modification? Is this to a misfolding? Is like, is that necessary?
Yeah.
Like, that's not, that's never gonna matter. As opposed to knowing how to do the treatments, and how the best treatment plan for the specific scenario. So
Mhm.
yeah, definitely as a whole, most of my classmates it's just really interesting to bring this up because I'm starting this research project with a professor where we're going to gauge mentalities and stressors, comparing step one and step two in residency preparation. So eventually I will have a more informed answer for you. But just talking to my friends, they like the idea of step two being more focused. So I think it's just better in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I like that answer a lot. Definitely. I haven't even I've done like no research on what people think about step 2. I was just focused on why people like step 1 being pass or fail, but I haven't heard that perspective that it's more worthwhile to test your clinical knowledge rather than all the scientific minutia.
Exactly.
Or like that exam score, as you put it, would be more reflective of how you'll be as a physician compared to your step 1 score.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I totally agree with that. I've just put step 2 like far off in the distance, so I haven't even thought about what that score even means. Um,
Well,
but yeah,
so
that's it'll definitely be interesting. I think the admissions committee it's going to be new for them too. Like they have no idea how to evaluate this new cohort.
yeah.
Like,
I mean,
so
it's just like reading some papers about how residencies have viewed this change. It's interesting. The internal med, the family medicine residence programs are more okay with step one being changed,
mhm.
but it's the more competitive specialties that are way more against it.
Because it
Um,
was an easy way for those program directors to
to
separate
be
students.
exactly, yeah, like the derm programs, the plastics, the ortho programs are so against it.
Yeah, now
Um,
they actually have to read personal statements.
exactly right. And and again, it's just like I think step two always was seemed as the fun tests, right? Because it's more clinically oriented, and it's like, well, shouldn't that be what's important anyway? So
Yeah,
that's why I like that idea. And people might disagree, which is fine, and people are more educated than I am, but we'll just see what happens. But I don't mind being the guinea pig because I feel like the process will be a little easier. Hopefully
yeah.
so.
Yeah, overall, I think there's definitely cons to any choice, but I think the pros might actually outweigh the cons for
Yeah.
step 1 being pass fail. Um, I feel like, well, my solution was um, a little bit different, but I wish that all of medical school was still an exact same system as university. for me, I think that would be the fairest representation of a student. So you make step one and step two both pass fail. Board exams, all standardized exams, a one-day exam should not determine anything about the rest of your life. It should just be a competency measure to progress through your clinical training, just to show that you're competent enough to move to the next stage. So if you fail it, then, you know, you need to like take it again or whatever. But if you pass it, doesn't matter what your score is, as long as you pass, you're competent enough to move to your next stage of training. And then and then it's just med school works like university. So it's a letter grade system. So rather than your clinical courses being pass fail in step one and step two being scored, switch it around. So that means that like maybe you don't do well. Like my GI score would look atrocious on my transcripts. Like, but I never plan to apply to GI. But it's like, you know, I would have a C for my GI score, which would, I guess, lower my GPA. But like I love cardiology, for example, and I loved internal, and my scores for that would be reflected highly. And if that was a specialty I would go into, you know, a residency program would see that I got an A for cardiology, and they'd be like, okay, this guy is probably a good cardiologist, and it's okay, he got a C for GI, but like we see he's good in this specialty. And like I feel like that is a better representation of like, I mean, if a student gets all perfect scores, like then good for them. Like it's the same scenario as like a 4.0 person applying to med school. But then for people who struggled in one unit, but like someone who wants to really be a dermatologist, like showed they really excelled in their dermatology rotation or that specific subsection of their preclinical years, like who cares? Like as long as they did well in that and apply to that specialty, they could still get in. I just feel like that might make it a level playing field, but then, well, now you're worrying about preclinical. But then see, I'm a person who actually, I wish I could go to lecture. Like I wish I could engage with my professors and stuff, but the nature of step one for me just didn't allow me to do that. And that's why I wish step one and step two didn't exist. And all of medical education was just going to lectures, engaging with physicians and professors, which preclinical was not like that for me. We all use these random freaking third-party resources, Boards and Beyond, Sketchy and stuff, but that's medical school didn't used to work like that, even like 10, 15 years ago. Like people had to go to lectures and get good scores on their in-house exams because that's what medical school was about. But that, I mean, for me, that mentality was gone. Like preclinical was 0% of my focus.
See, it's interesting. I have my solution was the complete opposite of yours.
Okay.
My solution was make all the first 2 years, because I do think the clinical years should be graded and ranked, but make the preclinical years all pass fail everywhere, but make step one scored. I was like, I think that's my compromise, and I think this also might be because of our difference in experiences, because the way I see it is like, you know, sometimes things get hard, and so it's really, you know, sometimes you have a rough patch, and so that's sometimes the grades might not reflect your overall work ethic, like your lecture grades, so to say. Then I think of like a step exam that's standardized across the board, same material everyone's responsible for. To me, that felt like more of a fair representation of your competency of, you know, did you learn the stuff you actually need to learn? However, you know, your solution I think is good, but then I think is a resident director going to go through and check every person's individual class that they took? Because
that's true.
Every school's curriculum is different.
You're right. The curriculum would have to be standardized too.
That's the thing. So like when my school, it's a block curriculum, whereas yours, I can tell, is an organ-based system.
Yes.
So it's not super. It would not be. It would. I think that would just make it so much more difficult.
I see what you're saying.
So, but again, there's pros and cons to everything, right? Like, and everyone's perspectives is so, you know, your opinion is based off of your own experiences and your perspectives. And they're all valid completely. Because again, pros and cons to mine, definitely pros and cons to yours. And it's just it's like, can we all just everything be pass fail? Everything be pass fail.
That would definitely be nice. Everything pass fail. I guess that would make it hard for the residency directors to evaluate things, but a totally pass fail medical school I wouldn't mind going to. Our Well, I guess for you now, your preclinical and step one is pass fail, but is your third and fourth year still like honors, pass, stuff like that?
Yeah, ranked and everything.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's pretty standard across most med schools.
Which people complain about because they're like it's subjective, and I'm like, I mean, I get it. I also get that, but like, my joke solution is like, well, just don't be an asshole, and that,
Yeah,
that help you out a little. That should help you out in the long run.
yeah. No, that's really good advice actually, because if you're an asshole, like those residents will dock you for sure.
Yeah, like
Um,
you just say yes, sir, no, sir, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.
yeah. It definitely is subjective, but it's not too bad. Like, yeah, if you do your work and stuff, most people are going to score you high for your evaluations.
Mhm.
But for us, for example, like not only do we have to do well in our evaluations, but we need that minimum shelf score to also get an honors. And that's what really like trips people up. It like if they're like 1 point, like let's say you need an 80 on your IM shelf to get an honor and you get a 79, like the admin won't even bump your score up a little to give you an honors. Like that is a high pass. Even if you have honors in all other components, like an honor in your evaluation, your team loved you, you're an amazing internist, but then your shelf score is 1 point away from an honors, then like, I mean, that's specific to my school, but yeah, my school wouldn't bump that up in some cases.
That's wild.
Yeah, so that's the part that sucks, but yeah, it is what it is, I guess. Yeah, so I guess moving on, I was just interested about those subjects because for us it was scored, and so I wanted to hear your opinions about it and like
Oh, for
what you
sure.
think is a good solution is. But I guess moving on, a little bit more about you and kind of your experiences during the preclinical years, because you only have a little bit left now. So you've pretty
Yeah.
much gone through the whole thing. But what would you say, your advice or what you have done to kind of have some sort of balance through your preclinical years, like balancing studying with just living life, basically?
Well,
What have you been doing basically to handle that?
yeah, I have so many like the general advice I always give to first years is when you go into medical school, get okay with being behind and get okay with not comparing yourself to others.
Hmm.
You're gonna feel smarter than some people some days, and you're gonna feel like the dumbest person in your class some days. And that's okay.
Hmm.
Everyone feels that way. Normal. But the most important thing, it's not like undergrad where you're like, okay, I gotta be caught up. That's so unrealistic in most cases. In medical school, you can pull all-nighters every night if you want. It's not worth it. And it's not sustainable. And it's just not, again, realistic. You're not gonna have a good quality of life. I can attest to that because in neuro, I was so stressed. I was only studying, and was it worth it? Absolutely not. Um, and I forgot to take care of myself in terms of like working out, eating well.
Hmm.
Um, so really, it's a matter of like whether it's in the mornings or in the evenings, whatever person you are, you need that time completely. And you're gonna hear this from everyone.
Hmm.
But as someone who's gone through it, you and me and everyone else, it's true. You have to take care of your body, however that may be. Like you don't have to be lifting like crazy. Just go on a freaking walk or
Yeah.
just do nothing. But whatever your body needs to be happy. And then eat well, don't eat out every meal. It's so easy to get stuck in that, especially when the loans come in, you feel like you're rich. You know, but eat the good meals, take care of your body in that way too. And really, this is my joke advice, but it's also not a joke. See a counselor right away when we start medical school, whether you feel like you need it or not, because one day you're gonna be freaking out. The degree might differ between people, but medical school is very difficult. And the days when I go to my counselor or my therapist, I'm like, all right, reset. I can do this again. And really, to answer your question more directly, is like first year, I felt like I had a really good balance. You
Mhm.
know, um, it was difficult, but it's what I expected. And because of my experiences, I was fine with not knowing everything. Asterisk mark, it took me a little bit to get completely comfortable with that in medical school. But when I really became comfortable with who I was as a student, my life was so much better. Second year, I was like, there's no way it's this hard. This is just impossible. I was like, this is just too hard. Like, and it took again, quality of life went down for a little bit for me. But then going, because my friends were doing really well, we had an immuno block, and I never took immuno.
That
And
block was hard. I understand.
I hated it. I was like, this is stupid. I was like, I hate this so much. But people are doing so well, and I'm like, I don't know what that I don't know what these things are. And but then going back and telling myself, eventually, it's okay if you don't know it. You
Mhm.
will learn it eventually. Go work out, go lift, go walk your dog, and just like it takes a lot of effort, but being able to master that, basically, the prioritizing of yourself helps a lot. And again, in neuro, it was the opposite for me, but everyone told me neuro is when your quality of life goes down regardless. So it was also nice to just commiserate, and venting to other people, even when you feel so like helpless or like so lost. I promise you, if there's others, just reach out. I'm sorry for all these stories, Daniel, but
Oh
there
no,
was
keep I like them. Keep telling them.
there was one time in anatomy, like again, in anatomy, I just felt like I was the stupidest thing in the world. I thought like everyone's so smart, I'm so dumb, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I saw my friend Marcos, and I was like, oh, in anatomy lab. I haven't like seen him in like a week. I was like, hey dude, how you been, man? How's it going? He was like, honestly, hobby not good. And I was like, oh, like why? Tell me, dude. And he was like, oh, dude, I'm just so stressed. Like I started crying last night. And I was like, Marcos, I was crying last night. We just laughed about it. I was like, okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only. See, that's the thing. People are just so good at hiding it, But everyone feels stupid,
Yeah.
And even the people who like are like, oh, I know everything. I promise you, they're saying that because they feel stupid. So find people that you can complain with, people that are like you. I remember this one again in anatomy. Ugh. And I say anatomy because in my philosophy is people get humbled as they go about medical school.
Mhm.
This one girl, ugh, my first anatomy exam, she's like about to cry, and I'm very like, oh my god, like how are you doing? And so I'm like, oh, like tell me, like, well, how'd you do? And she was like, ugh, I got an 82. I was like, all right.
That's a good score.
Like I got a 73. Like I was like, I'm never gonna ask anyone ever how they did ever again.
Yeah, as long as you pass, no need to. I know that feeling though. Yeah, there's some people in my class who did really well in anatomy. They like took anatomy beforehand, and so they like just killed it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, number one rule in medical school: don't share grades. Never share grades.
yeah, not no point really at all.
Like the only thing I ask people is like, did we survive? But even
Yeah,
before
did we survive? Yeah.
yeah, and even before that, I read their body language, because if they're really down, I'm like, you know what, I'm not even gonna ask.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah, I definitely understand that. Well, one thing that I like that you said um was about visiting like a counselor, like starting off with a counselor therapist
Mhm.
before or right as you start medical school. And to be perfectly honest, that's something I have actually never done in my life. I've never seen a therapist. I probably should have at some point, like when I was, deciding to take my leave of absence and stuff.
Uh,
And for me, like looking back, probably the reason I never saw a therapist was I was so self-conscious of myself that I didn't. I thought like how could I see a therapist? Like I that's just how I felt about myself. And I think part of the reason is because like my parents are also immigrants. They came from Russia, and
mhm.
like first of all, mental health doesn't exist in the Soviet Union. Like those Russian memes, like we don't have mental health here. Like we don't have depression here. We just have vodka. um, that was definitely the mentality I was raised with, and so I never saw one. But I feel like I really like what you said. Like even if at that point in your career, like you're coming in all happy from undergrad, ready to hit medical school, like even establishing that baseline could be so important. I feel
Yeah.
like it can just be so useful. Like even if in that current moment, like you have no mental health problems, just having someone like a counselor like that, it's I kind of wish I did that to start off with for sure. Because even our med school provided that free resource for us. We have like a counselor that works with students.
Mhm.
So I really like that you said that. I think that is a really good piece of advice for sure.
And it's so difficult, like when I first started seeing a therapist, or like a psychiatrist and psychologist years ago in undergrad, my first semester. um you're so hesitant about it because same thing, coming from a Mexican family, they say, well, you never talk about your feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
Always being an athlete and a good student, I was like, I really said so many times, mental illness is for the weak, which is such a horrible statement to say, right? But when you go through it yourself, you're like, oh shit, like no, everything could be perfect, but
Yeah,
something in your brain is just telling you it's not.
yeah,
And it's just the word. But see, that's the thing. You don't need a counselor because you're mentally ill. Just having a counselor just to complain about your day, and just, because your friends are your friends, but sometimes you need someone who doesn't know anything to tell you, chill out. And
yeah, I
that
agree.
that will just go a long way sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm definitely someone who like I don't easily share my emotions or feelings, but
Yeah.
not just because I don't want to, but also I like I've never done that in my life really. Like been like that vulnerable as to share like how I'm feeling with a therapist. I mean, I obviously like with my wife and stuff, she was probably the one who took the brunt of me being like, oh man, I don't know if medicine is right for me. Like back when I was thinking about taking a leave of absence and stuff,
Mhm.
like, but she was probably the only person I confided to, and like maybe my parents every now and then. It was definitely a huge like internal struggle.
Uh-huh.
Um, but now like after, I mean, I've completely rested now. I'm so ready to go back. But looking back, definitely, I can see the immense value of like going to a therapist or talking to someone, like not necessarily your friends, but someone completely on the outside, like kind of a little bit unbiased, I guess, if that's the right word.
No, exactly.
uh
Yeah. It's fun. And I'm glad you have your wife, and you're able to talk to your parents a bit about what you're going through.
yeah.
It's always good to have any support, um, and you having advice, and you even because your wife is not in medicine, correct?
No, yeah,
Yeah.
she switched jobs recently, but yeah, she's not in medicine.
Okay, yeah. So even someone who's like objectively out of the field, right, is like that's still a good someone to bounce ideas off of. But you know, to anyone else who might not have the support, definitely just go to a counselor. They're awesome, and they'll teach you all these skills. When you like, what do they say? Like, just stop being sad, right?
Yeah.
That means nothing. But after years of doing this, it's nice to be able to tell myself, just stop being sad. And you're like, oh, it goes away.
Yeah.
But it's again, maybe because I'm in a Marvel phase right now, but I feel like it's a superpower now where I have so much control over your emotions. But that only comes with years and years of you denying this control, of someone challenging you. And it's really just so cathartic. And I think that, and I think as a general sense, that's kind of what my whole thing is about is, in medicine, we're physicians, right? We're these tenacious students who have been so adamant about going through this path,
Hmm.
and we think we can solve our own problems. And there's this hesitancy towards getting mental health help. And then physicians, same thing. They think, no, I don't need help. But really, we can all benefit from this. And that's kind of the culture that I'm trying to change a little bit. And, with some other people and on campus, at least at my school, we're definitely doing a big push on this, which is exciting. And, just hopefully one day, like, not one day, but I like that medicine is now going towards this conversation of mental health and being more accepting of it and commonplace about it. And so it's just exciting. I'm glad your school basically offers that as well.
Yeah, it is nice for sure. Yeah. And I really like the kind of what your efforts and making it something that's more talked about, like, and it is more talked about like in the general public, like normal professions, but yeah, specifically in the medical school profession, like the types of people that are physicians, like a lot of them are type A, as
Yeah.
I was just like literally as I was just describing about myself, like someone who would never talk about it normally or wasn't used to. I feel like a lot of medical students are in a similar boat. So like opening up that conversation and stuff, I think that's really important, like moving forward,
Yeah.
especially during like these last 2 years for sure. Like all this pandemic stuff, like it's
Oh,
been a whirlwind. Like, I mean,
no,
my
yeah.
wife was saying like how, I mean, she was a consultant before, and she was like, and then she looks on the news, like global warming and like these riots happening like on the Capitol and stuff. Just like, why am I going to work today? Like this is so insignificant. And sometimes I felt like that in medical school, which is like it's definitely weird to say because, oh man, I'm studying to be a doctor. Like this is so important. Like I'm going to have such a critical role in society. But it is sometimes you do think, you're just one physician and like you're still in medical school. Like you definitely feel insignificant at this point in your career. But I felt like that sometimes. But I do like how you have a goal with your you back to what you're saying in the beginning of this whole thing, like about how you saw what was happening in the medical community and how some psychiatric patients were treated and your experiences, and just like even if you can make that small impact as a physician, like in your bubble, like that's still really important. Like who knows what butterfly effects that will have like for other people, you don't
Yeah.
know how far your reach is.
No,
um
exactly.
yeah. And actually that's a good that's a good segue to what I wanted to I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I just have basically
Fine.
just
Yeah,
a
go for
couple
it.
more questions with you
You're
for
fine.
you. But talking about like reach and stuff, well, first, if you wanted to share with people kind of like your social media stuff
Oh,
and
stop.
how you got started with that. Yeah, share with
No.
everyone what you do, how and why you got started with stuff with social media.
Well, like everyone, I'm always someone who I just like randomly post on Facebook and Instagram just to vent about my life.
Yeah.
Then like, and annoy all my friends about it. But
Go like my post.
but then like with TikTok is such a weird thing, like TikTok, everyone sees everything. It's just everyone can see just the random thing. And I
Yeah.
thought TikTok was the stupidest thing in the world.
Dude,
And then one
same.
day
I thought it was pretty dumb too.
right? But then one day I downloaded it and I was on it for like 5 hours because TikTok knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
And then one day I'm just like seeing like all these things that start coming up on my For You page. And in medical school, I'm just seeing all these like, and even on YouTube, I'm seeing like all these like the perfect medical student. Like there's this one person, I'm not, I'm there. It's like, I watch their videos because they upset me so much, because it's like this person wakes up so early in the morning, works out twice a day, everything. And I'm like, dude, that's not how it is. That's not how life is in medical school. Like, what are you talking about? And then one day it was during like my immuno or whatever block, and my room was disgusting. And I just made this funny TikTok of like, can we normalize getting rid of the aesthetic medical school culture and normalize being a medical student who barely has your life together but still thriving? And it was like, yeah, my life's a mess right now, but I'm still, it's like I'm published and I'm, I do all my other research stuff. And
Mhm.
it was interesting to see that there was like a community that kind of went around this. And I was like, oh, that's funny. I was like, and then people were like, can we have more of this? I'm like, oh, I can share more about my shitty life. Sure. And then, and also just like using TikTok as a way to vent about the stuff, my mental health stuff that I would go through. It was just, what I tell like my therapist is like, it's a weird way of creatively expressing myself and just venting to the world
Mhm.
without having to vent to my friends on my personal social medias like Instagram or Facebook. And then eventually people just start rallying around this community, and I'm seeing other people who do the same. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And I like the idea of kind of adding, filling the need, right? Of adding this character that isn't seen on social media when it comes to medicine, especially medical students. Me being, I had the whole thing, the whole intersectional issue, like being gay, being an immigrant or first generation Mexican, and then being mentally ill. And also just having a shitty life sometimes is like,
Yeah.
that's something that I'm glad to share. And, it's just been exciting to show this. And then, I post a few things like, I posted some dances and stuff like that of like me basically saying I have type 2 bipolar disorder, I have OCD, and I was going through a really, really rough patch in October and September. And I was, and it's very honest for me, and I was suicidal again. I was going through the things again, and it
Mhm.
was like so frustrating because you go all your times, all these months of being great, and then suddenly it just switches and you're like, oh shit, what's happening again?
Yeah.
And it's like that's a reality of it. And then I thought this podcasting that I'm trying to do is like, I've always had this story of my first 2 years of undergrad, specifically those 2 years, because they're very formative for me in terms of my sexuality, my personality and my mental health struggles.
Mhm.
I also met a lot of awesome people that I think the world needs to know about. So I always wanted to write this book. I wrote a few chapters of it, but then, that's just so much more work. But then eventually this semester, I was like, wait a minute. People, people like stories. People ask me on my TikTok lives. People ask me on comments. People message me. I Zoom with people. This is a great way to get this out. And so that's why I created this podcast where I have been I've interviewed like 7 people now, which is exciting. Um,
Nice. That's a lot.
oh, it's so yeah, this week has just been so lazy for me. Or so stressful. I haven't put anything out this week, but I will put it out today, is what I
Nice.
say. But no, like it's just exciting on TikTok, I did this call to action of like, if you're any mental health, any health professional, student or worker,
Mhm.
and you deal with mental health issues to any degree, I want to hear your story and I want your story out there. And you mentioned your family being from Russia, where it's not something you talk about. I interviewed this one person from Turkey. She's a second year medical student in Turkey who comes from Iran, and this is something that she was telling me all her struggles, and she's like, I asked her like, how is your school in terms of mental health and the community? She's like, it doesn't exist. People don't talk about it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that's so sad. That's just so, I just felt so bad. I was like, that's wild. And then this other student, and then, obviously I can share because they're fine with it. But like this one person who, teen pregnancy is something you don't think about when it comes to medical students. This person was a pre-med, had 2 kids, horrible grades, but then eventually got in. And it's like, just hearing all these multifaceted students and not just the cookie cutter student. And that's what I've been trying to do. And that's why I like the idea of the podcast and the reach, like you said, getting it all out there. And, hopefully people can hear this. People can realize, oh, there's these type of physicians. And then people can also realize, oh, I can be a medical student, and because that's my life. That's kind of my long-winded answer to that, but it's just like, I don't know, it's a silly way to feel like you're doing something else. And my therapist has also said that this is the happiest you've seen me in 3 years.
Oh man, nice. Congrats. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I really like everything you're doing. I mean, I love following your TikTok page. That's how initially I found you. Like there's a whole medical community there. And yeah, TikTok's definitely interesting because some people can be pretty savage on TikTok, like in the comments and stuff. But it's actually a pretty minimal amount. Like I think, especially if you're in a medical niche or healthcare worker, like most of the people that are following you are like students, pre-meds, like people who are just in the same community and are only trying to uplift each other.
Mhm.
And that's like 90% of the people, at least for me, like really positive comments. And I really like that community. Like um I like the community is like even a little bit stronger compared to like a YouTube community, I think,
It is,
because
yeah.
YouTube, you're kind of disengaged from your audience because it's a very curated, highly edited thing. And I
Mhm.
think that is probably one of the issues, because I've been doing this for like 3 years, like social media, all this stuff, because
Mhm.
I was a videographer beforehand. So that's why it really translated well for me to post on YouTube. But because it's so highly curated and it does require a little bit of like, editing knowledge and
Yeah.
stuff, I think that's why it seemed like the community of medical students who were like posting on social media were like the people who had their lives together and stuff. Because that's kind of what a baseline you need to like just, at least back then, to be able to post on YouTube, like
For
because
sure.
it's so curated. But TikTok is so fast and it can be such a snippet of time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Which is why I think there is a shift, like not just for medical school, but for a lot of like creators like that,
Uh-huh.
showcasing more like what it's actually like to be part of this.
No,
Um,
exactly.
but yeah, that's kind of my theory on like the aesthetic medical
Well,
school life.
like I said, that's why I love your YouTube videos, because they look so good. I think they're
Yeah.
so like, I love watching them. Like, oh, I feel like I need to get my life in order.
No, no, trust me, it's just that 4K resolution. I think even the people who it looks like they have their life together, it's still probably just as much of a struggle for them.
Hmm.
But that is definitely something I want to do more of in 2022, like with TikTok and my channel, just be more honest with everyone. Um, like when I would make YouTube videos, like in my first year for sure, like I just showed exactly what I was doing, have a sick workout edit or something,
Of course, right?
put some cool drone shots in. And that was actually my day. Like I wasn't lying about my day, but never once did I dive into like how I felt at 6 p.m. like before my dinner. Like I just showed my dinner, but I'm like,
Yeah.
oh damn, like I'm so tired. Like I hate this unit. Like I never express myself because I'm just not one to usually do that.
Yeah.
Um, and that's I'm definitely I have to admit that I did do that. Like I wasn't honest uh always with my audience. Well, not I don't think that's the right thing. Like not honest. I just didn't share a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that might be doing a disservice. Like that might be painting medical school too highly, you know, like this is so fun. Like, and it sometimes it is fun, but I don't always share when it's not.
But
Like
see,
I used to never share when it's not fun, basically.
but see, that's also understandable because people say like, should you share this if you want to go into medicine? Like, is it okay to share so much about yourself? Like, what if residencies see that?
Yeah.
So my answer to that has always been like, if a residency program does not want me because I said that I have bipolar or that I cried after an exam, then I don't want to be part of that residency because that just tells me how toxic of an environment that's going to be.
True. Yeah.
And so that's kind of my solution to that is just like, well, then it wasn't meant to be. But there's others that are way not, that other programs that are not toxic at all. And so, the vulnerability, here's my joke. You don't have to share yourself crying after an exam like I did. I'm very expressive and I know I'm very annoying with that. But no, but like yeah, it's nice that people are feeling more comfortable to even share like I'm stressed. That in
Mhm.
itself is such a powerful thing to say because you're showing people, oh, you can have a great life but also feel stressed. Perfect. Because that's how I feel.
Mhm.
It's just, but it's just interesting because like when you posted your video about your leave of absence, I was like, what?
Yeah,
I-
that was the message I got from a lot of people actually. They were the last, like they were saying I'm the last person they ever say. Even all my friends were saying that too cuz I just never talked about it at all
yeah,
with my
I was like,
friends. Like
this
they were
guy has
shocked as well. Like
nothing.
they basically showed up, so we had a week break between internal and then our next rotation, and then I got like 30 text messages like, "Hey, the orientation has started. Where are you?" Like I didn't tell. I mean, I didn't feel like I had to tell my friends, but looking back, maybe I should have told them more. But that's definitely something we can get into when
For sure, yeah.
you do your podcast. So I won't dive too deep into that. But um, yeah, it might. I don't know how similar my situation is for a lot. I mean, I'm sure a lot of medical students have definitely contemplated like taking a leave.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's a unique feeling, but definitely like my background and how I was raised and the type of student I was like played a role in everything. But
Mm,
yeah, we can discuss that
for sure, yeah.
for your podcast. And I'll definitely link for sure all your podcast information and then your
Oh, that's
TikTok and
awesome.
stuff
Oh, thank
somewhere
you so
around
much.
here.
You're too kind.
Description or some cool little pop-up somewhere. Yeah. So what's kind of a final question since we're about an hour here. Final question for you is like what is your goals in 2022 like as a medical student and then also in terms of like social media like um kind of your plans moving forward in those two avenues. I'm interested in hearing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, it's um I definitely want to be more active in engaging with the people who comment on my stuff.
Mhm.
I definitely want to share more about my days, because really my TikToks when I make them, it's like I've tried planning them, but then I start studying and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I forget. And just really
Yeah.
being, showing more of like, I want to do more of like those days in the life type of things. Cause those are just fun, so that way it's not all just pathetic ranting. But no, just posting more daily, even if it's like one little thing of showing like what I'm going through. And especially during step studying, I want to have a good record of that to look back and kind of laugh at. With the podcast, I want to see that grow. I want that to be like, that's why I told my friends, I was like, people can make fun of me. My friends can make fun of me for my TikToks, my Instagram, like whatever. I don't care about. But I was like, the podcast, it took me a week of like venting to my friends about it because I was like, this is very important to me, this thing that I want to do with this, and I don't want people to think it's stupid. And I had like people listen to the first episode before I sent it out.
Hmm.
Because I was like, is this worth it? Like, is this? And they're like, yeah, this is cool. And I was like, okay. And then just getting people who are excited about it, I'm like, okay, I want to see this podcast. Like right now with because it's 6 episodes right now, and like, one episode is divided into two. So it's 3 different stories. It's 2 of mine and 1 of this one person. And I'm already at 220 listens, which I'm really excited about.
Nice.
Yeah. And I have like, it's like 30 unique listeners. I'm like, okay, like that's cool. It's like, it's growing a little bit, but I want to see it in this whole year. Like I want to see that number go to 1,000. I want to see those unique listeners go to 200.
Yeah.
I finally made a Twitter. I never used Twitter, and I'm going to use my Twitter to just promote the podcast because I want these stories to be out. And my
Yeah.
ideal goal would be for, I don't know, I want people to be like, oh shit, like there's this thing where medical students are sharing their experience, their honest routes to medical school and what they've dealt with. And there's so many medical students, here's a joke, with mental illness.
Mhm.
They don't have to be diagnosed, but just people that just deal with things, Um, and also my other goal, yeah, my YouTube is just too much work for me. That's just so much work for me. I can't do that myself.
It is a lot of work. I mean, a podcast in and of itself is already a lot of work. So yeah, I feel like you can't spread yourself too thin, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I really hope your podcast takes off too. Do you when you do your podcast, is it live or is it like pre-recorded and then you publish it?
Oh, a pre-record. So I record it and then I cut. Everything that people say I put in the broadcast. I just cut the timings of it.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes. But no, I recorded and then yeah. So I have like 7 of them recorded already. They're just sitting in a
Nice.
file. And
Okay,
then
awesome. Yeah.
down to it.
Where do you play them on? Like, where can
Uh,
people find them?
yeah. So the link. So I have it hosting on I forget the host website. Starts with an A, but it's on Spotify, Google
Oh,
podcast,
nice.
and iTunes. It was so cool
Okay.
to see on iTunes. I was like, ooh, this
Yeah,
is
that's
so
like
exciting.
legit.
And then the artwork of it, my friend, my classmate, he's a great artist, and he
Mhm.
posted about like if anyone would buy his work, and I was like, hey, dude, I'll pay you to make artwork. And he made the artwork for my podcast, and I kind of teared up. It's so silly to say because I was like, I've had this vision for years about this story, and he
Uh-huh.
captured it, and I was like, oh my god, yes, it was so exciting, and I was like, oh my god, this is happening.
Nice.
It's silly, but it just means a lot to me, and so people want to listen to it. I get people who are in the field, but I also share my own story, which is a long story.
Mhm.
It's a very honest story. So far I've talked about, it's a linear story, right? What I tell people is when you listen to the podcast and it's in there, this story has a very happy ending, obviously. I wouldn't be telling it if it didn't.
Mhm.
But sometimes it gets very sad. Like, kind of to say what I've talked about so far is, yeah, having my first panic attack, getting diagnosed. And, the last episode, to be very quite honest, I talk about how I developed an eating disorder.
Mhm.
Being a college swimmer and then being on medication that makes you gain weight, you're in a speedo of, 8 hours a day, and, things are changing, and you're like, you just feel really bad about yourself. Right.
Mhm.
And that's just an honest thing that I dealt with. And, I'm smiling because obviously things have changed. So it's okay. But
Yeah.
I always want to get that story out there because it's not about my experience so much as the people who helped me through it that I want to get out there. Um, and also I like
Nice.
telling stories, so it's fun and fine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I think there's a lot of students, not even medical students, but pre-meds or university students, like who would definitely greatly appreciate and find value in a lot of the stories that you're sharing with your podcasts.
Nice. Well,
Um,
oh,
and
oh,
that's yeah, and that's kind of also, I mean, one of the main reasons I also just wanted to interview you and to share your story, with everyone, with whatever little audience I have.
dude, you got over a
Because I'm
thousand
sure,
subscribers, dude. That's exciting.
yeah, dude, yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to share this as well. I think a lot of my followers and even my classmates would really find this useful because I'm sure a lot of them have struggled through similar things and would definitely find use in hearing this conversation.
Hopefully so. It's definitely fun. It's just also nice to like talk to you because like I followed you for like 3 years, and like it's like
I
so
think that's crazy.
when I saw you follow me, I was like, what? Oh my
Yeah,
god.
it was on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because you were like one of the first um like medical students I saw basically on my page.
Oh
Like,
really?
yeah, it took a while for TikTok to recognize, that's the type of content I like. Because at
Uh-huh.
first it was like whatever craziness is going on, and then it slowly started like I started seeing more like healthcare professionals on my page.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, that's how I ended up seeing you, and I'm like, oh, I really like your TikToks and what you're sharing. So
Oh yeah, no, I
yeah,
was like,
that's awesome.
it's
Dang.
just so funny.
I can't believe you. I've never talked with. I actually did. I talked with one subscriber, but he subscribed to me like a year ago. But I don't think I've ever talked to anyone like from 3 years ago. That's crazy.
No,
So
I've
like
I've
when I
been
first
following your
started
whole
med
journey,
school,
man. That's why like when you
that's
like that's
wild.
why like everything like every time you post, like I watch it. I'm like, oh cool. Like I love it just really draws it in with like I really appreciate the edits that you make. And it's just, even if I just have it in the background, sometimes you're just videos I rewatched are just replaying because I was like, oh,
Nice.
I enjoy it. So that's why when you did the whole, and we'll talk about the next one, like when you did the whole leave of absence, I was like, what, Daniel?
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, I guess I'll conclude it here.
Uh-huh.
I guess if you have any final words to my audience, I guess that you wanted to share, you
Oh,
can go ahead and say them.
I talk a lot. I feel like I say so many things all the time, even when people don't ask. But really, if you've seen this, like I'm smiling because life is great, but sometimes life sucks. And that's just the reality of it.
Mm,
The degree is always different for everyone, but we all experience it. And in medical school sucks sometimes. It's hard. It's not always the best time. Sometimes you wish you see other people living life now. I live on loans perpetually, and I'm like, when am I going to earn money? But it's like you're doing this because it's so worth it. But my mom always tells me, my mom is so annoying because she's always right. What my mom always tells me is like, when you're struggling with it, just find the joy in it and make it fun. Don't even think about the work. Just do it as see it as something that you love and something that you're going to help people with. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
yeah,
And that
I
does
like that advice a lot.
it helps so much, and she tells me like, don't worry about the grade, just learn it because you want to learn it.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and that helps me a lot so much. But yeah, basically when it comes to the people listening, last little sentence is like, seek help if you need it, even if you don't have to be at the brink of something stupid to need help. If you're just struggling, if you just feel like you're lost, you just feel stupid, find someone who can talk to you about it, and I
Mhm.
promise you, you're going to feel so much better about yourself. And you're going to learn so much about yourself, things that you didn't want to even talk about. And it's exciting to kind of understand yourself a little better. And that's ultimately what's going to make us into better physicians. Understanding ourselves is going to help us understand other people. And whether you're a neurologist or a psychiatrist or a family doctor, that's an important aspect of medicine, is being able to build that connection. So
Mhm.
having that connection with yourself will help you and all that jazz. That's enough of my rant.
Awesome. I love that message so much. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I appreciate it a lot. Good luck with step one and the rest of your medical school journey. One last thing, if you want to do, is the
Oh,
old data bio. So yeah,
ooh. That's a
nice data
bio.
bio.
Oh, thanks so much, man.